Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey Stafford here, previewing the TG4 All-Ireland Senior Football Final between All-Ireland champions Meath and Kerry, and I've been joined by All-Ireland winner herself, formerly of Dublin, Denise Masterson, and Emma Duffy of the 42.E. How are you doing?
Great, thanks, Mikey.
Good stuff. Denise, are we witnessing a new kind of democratic era here in women's football? You know, last year we had a semi-novel All-Ireland final pairing of Dublin and Meath, where everybody thought Dublin were going to go on and complete an historic run, and obviously they were stopped short. So now Meath are back in the final, but they're joined by Kerry, who haven't been in a final in nearly 10 years. And, you know, your own Dublin and Cork kind of fell by the wayside reasonably early enough. You know, Mayo are resurgent, Armagh, Donegal. It does seem that we've finally got to the point with women's football where you're not just talking about a monopoly or a duopoly.
Definitely not, and I think like Eamonn Murray alluded to during the week, I think Meath can take great credit from the fact that I think they have made other teams realise that the Chasing Park weren't really that too far behind maybe. I mean, there were a lot of tight games this year. I don't know if anyone maybe predicted Kerry themselves would make it to the All-Ireland final this year. There were a lot of other people who I thought might have been good contenders, you know. I think Armagh are coming very strong. A few shock results, I suppose, in the quarterfinals with all the provincial winners going out, you know, which just shows you how close it is. I mean, teams that had been beaten in the provincial finals went on to win All-Ireland quarterfinals. So you can just see how much more together the pack is, and makes for much more exciting games and much better, I suppose, a spectacle for ladies football. I mean, great credit to the Cork and the Dublin team that I suppose really helped push that bar. But I think the standard of ladies football, I don't think it's that those two teams have fallen back. I really think it's a case that the standard of ladies football is really driving forward, and that there were some super performances from all teams this year in the championship. Yeah,
Emma, it does seem that we are kind of reaching some kind of a critical mass where, you know, we're actually kind of talking about the teams, we're talking about the players, we're talking about the tactics. You know, obviously Meath's kind of approach last year is kind of obviously very well spoken about, but obviously now we've got Kerry kind of, and how we'll get onto that and kind of contrast it, but we've kind of got past the point of talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if people came to the matches, or why does nobody watch it, yada yada. It does not, I don't mean to sound in any way condescending for someone who doesn't cover it all the time. I won't pretend that I do, but it does seem to me now that we now have fully formed teams, and we have personalities, and we have managers, and now we're throwing into that, as Denise just says, a proper competition. It does seem Gaelic football's in a good place.
Yeah, I do think there has been a notable shift over the last 2 years. Like, even since I kind of started working in the field in 2016 or so, I've seen huge improvements since then, which is great. But there's always still scope for more. Like, I think just in women's sport in general, it kind of is a lot done, a lot more to do. That's always the case, whether it be with coverage, with standards, with, you know, just little tweaks and changes that we can make. But yeah, as you say, it's fantastic to be here on All-Ireland final week and to be talking about the teams, the tactical battle, the matchups, which we see so regularly in the men's game, but probably not so much in the women's game. But yeah, that's really exciting. And as you say, there's not just as much of an emphasis on how much the crowd is there going to be there, or how much of a crowd will there be there, will the record be broken. Isn't it great to see two teams playing on the biggest stage? Like, you know, it's about much more than that now. And look, it's only right. Like, we see the work that the players put in, that management teams put in. Like, it's come on ridiculous amounts in recent seasons. Even since you finished up, I'd say, Denise, you're probably much more well versed to speak on it than I am, but just the commitment levels now and the dedication and the training has just gone through the roof. And look, it's right that that's what we're talking about coming into this weekend, and it's really exciting. It should be a fantastic battle. Like you say, a new look final. I think the first time since 2002 we won't have Dublin or Cork there, much to Denise's sadness, I guess. But it is great for the game, and I do think what Meath did last year is exactly what it needed. It shook things up, and you know, it really proved to every team and every player out there, not just in ladies football, but in any sport in the country, that anything can happen on any given day.
Yeah, and there are parallels, Denise, I suppose, that they're not so precise as to be spooky, but you're talking about Meath won a Division 2 title, Kerry won a Division 2 title. You know, Meath were promoted from intermediate. Kerry survived a relegation playoff. So if any team has been inspired by Meath this year, you'd have to say Kerry, who nobody doubted the footballers. They had, you know, some of the most talented forwards in the country. It just seemed that maybe there was a belief deficit there, or maybe there was like, you know, Dublin and Cork, their neighbours, just loomed so large that it was hard for them to kind of to shake the monkey off their back. But now Meath have kind of shattered his ceiling, and it now seems that anything goes.
Yeah, I know the contrast isn't quite the same in terms of Meath were absolutely annihilated by Cork, I suppose, in 2015 and came up through Division 3, Division 2, Division 1, and then obviously with their 3 intermediate All-Ireland final appearances. But definitely, I think what it does show you is how close those top teams maybe in Division 2 are to the Division 1 teams. I mean, Kerry lost to Meath last year, and funnily enough, I think Meath would have been more underdogs in that Division 2 final last year, whereas as Kerry probably exactly the same as Meath would have been the underdogs against Armagh this year, so which is also another interesting, I suppose, comparison. But I mean, Kerry were unlucky, I suppose, that they came up against possibly with Dublin and Cork, you know, being the best two ladies football teams of the past, like we said, what is it, 12, 14 years, 15 years maybe, you know. And so Kerry always had that struggle in terms of Munster, you know, which I'm sure did a lot of damage to confidence in teams as well when they were being hockeyed by that team, you know, regularly down there. You could also say it has some of them very battle hardened because, like, you know, some of them have been around for those days as well, which I think will stand to them in Croke Park on Sunday. But definitely, I think me did put down a marker that, you know, just winning a Division 2 title. I mean, they didn't just go after an All-Ireland last year. Here they are again in the final, which, you know, is an achievement in itself, really, you know, because you can have that kind of yo-yo up and down effect, maybe from junior to intermediate, and sometimes it can happen from intermediate to senior. So, you know, all credit is due to Meath, and they mightn't have played their best football this season, but here they are in an All-Ireland final, backing up what they did last year. And definitely it would give, like you said, Emma, like all sorts of sports and teams great hope in terms of, you know. And I also think there's another parallel in terms of Kerry kind of quietly been coming in. They've been building for 3 years with this management team. You know, I think that Meath were doing a lot of rebuilding at that intermediate level, and you could probably say the same for Kerry in terms of their Division 2 league performances and that, you know. And I think that they're a very together unit that kind of have been under the radar and possibly not as analysed. You know, I think Mick Bohan alluded to that last year when Dublin were coming up against me. They were a little bit of an unknown, you know, and I suppose the same could be said for Kerry. I mean, I think everyone has seen the performances they've put in this season, but they weren't a team that people would have been over-analysing. And I suppose we talk about, you were saying as well, in terms of styles of play, and that ladies football is probably really getting its own personality. Like, I actually thoroughly enjoyed that people were kind of getting all het up about the defensive football of Meath and Donegal. I even think that we're at that stage, that it's becoming so tactical and people were actually annoyed, like, and it was so defensive and it was going to be such a poor semi-final, you know, that. But Kerry, on the other hand, I don't know how you would analyse them in that regard, because their style of play is very much it's a lovely style of football to watch, but tactically it wouldn't be like the way Meath were, and they've been analysed now this year. But yeah, definitely a lot of strong parallels, I suppose, to draw between Kerry and Meath heading into this year's All-Ireland final.
Yeah, Emma, they're still defensive, and they're still, you know, they get poor old Monaghan to a single point in their first game this year, but Meath don't seem to kind of be clicking in the same way as they did last year, certainly in attack. You know, it took Emma Duggan kind of scoring 3 points very late on for them to even, you know, to reach this stage. And you look at their scoring totals thus far this year, even against poor old Monaghan, I think they only scored 113, you know, in their first game. They never ran riot. That's not their style of play. Obviously, they're more built on defensive stability, but Eamonn Murray probably has to be a little bit worried coming into this final and kind of hoping that his big guns up front click.
Yeah, I think that's definitely hugely important for Sunday. Like, you need your Emma Duggans, you need your Stacey Grimes, Vikki Walls firing off all cylinders, and I don't have any doubt that they won't be. But you know, it's something that Eamonn Murray said after the semi-final. He thinks that they've kind of timed their run to perfection, which is maybe a scary thought coming into Sunday. And that's what all the great teams do, don't they? They just find a way to win. And Meath did that. Like we saw the quarter-final against Galway, obviously Emma Duggan with that last gas point. The semi-final, as you say, Duggan reeled off 3 down the home straight. And, you know, that's what great teams do. They eke it out, they find a way. And I suppose their big match experience and their know-how just shone through down the home straight, and I can see that probably happening again on Sunday. Now, that's not to say that Kerry are a fantastic team too. I watched them pretty closely this year, like you say, the attacking football. But then, as Denise said, the parallels to last year, maybe there is that little bit of an unknown quantity around them where they haven't just been put under the spotlight just as much, which is a really nice way to be coming into an All-Ireland final, isn't it? Like that's where everyone wants to be. People want to be underdogs because we've seen so many examples through the years of what can happen. Maybe not in ladies football until last year, but maybe in other sports. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really fascinating game on Sunday. But I do think that I would probably agree with what Eamonn Murray has said, that maybe they have timed their run to perfection, but maybe we won't know until Sunday, until that ball is thrown in, and probably not until the second half when it really comes down to crunch time.
Yeah, it's the holy grail, Denise, isn't it? Timing your run right. People would say the Limerick hurlers did it perfection this year, ignored the league and just got better and better. It's a little bit of a risky game though at the same time, isn't it, to hope that nobody's played their best yet, but for the biggest game in front of the biggest crowd on the biggest day, it's all going to click.
Yeah, and you know, it's gas because I feel they look a little bit tired this year, to be honest. You know, and some of those girls had a very long club season then as well with Dunboyne and that, and I actually think they look a bit tired. And I was wondering to myself, have they really got this nailed down? And I mean, God, if they have, Ivers has done an amazing job, because, you know, if it's timed that much to perfection, because they still have definitely not hit the heights of last year, you know. And I don't know if a bit more of that as well is, you know, the attention Vikki Wall and Emma Duggan are getting in games now. It's huge, and they haven't played their best football. But for me, I suppose then it's an even bigger sign of champions that if it's not that the run is necessarily timed to perfection, it's that they're actually gritting out results, and even more so than Emma Duggan's last-ditch efforts to win those quarterfinals and the semi-final. They held the ball in the semi-final out of their back line, you know, switched across the far side of the pitch, and the composure, I was actually blown away with it in Croke Park, and I actually said to myself, now, they're worthy winners of this game based on this alone, because the composure that the back line had, you know, they were under so much pressure. It's like Donegal had smelled blood, and they went up the other end and they got a score. And I really felt that for me was something that they've developed even further. I mean, I know they did it against Cork last year in a semi-final as well. They have this never say die attitude until the final whistle. But I just thought there was a little bit more about it. It was done with a little bit more class with the grit maybe this year. And I was really impressed with it. So I don't know. It remains to be seen until Sunday whether or not they've timed this run to perfection, or, you know, if they've actually just gritted out some results based on the confidence and the way that the team play together, you know. And there's probably a few unsung heroes in that team as well. Like for me, Niamh O'Sullivan, and I know people are talking about Stacey Grimes as well as being phenomenal, but I feel Niamh O'Sullivan always goes under the radar. And I think in these games as well, she's been really big for me. Like, I mean, they have such quality in all their players. And I suppose the fact that Vikki and Emma are getting all the attention, it'll be really up to them, I suppose, on Sunday. But like we said, it remains to be seen how timed to perfection this run is. And then in saying that, when we won the All-Ireland in 2010, you know, we just got over the line in a quarter-final against Clare, and then, you know, probably robbed Laois in a semi-final. Like, we just gritted out results, and then we went on, and it was timed to perfection, beat Tyrone. So, you know, maybe Meath have done that, and if they have, it'll be hats off on Sunday, because it'll be some timing.
Yeah, indeed. Emma, I suppose the other theory on it is that teams have, you know, Meath came with something that nobody had seen last year, and, you know, they are getting a chance to look at it now and analyse. And it was interesting to hear Galway's Nicola Ward talking after they'd been beaten, but after going so close, and she said, "Oh yeah, we you know, we looked at how we could possibly beat this Meath defensive structure, and we said, whatever you do, don't carry the ball into contact, and try play with width." And that's how to beat Meath. So, you know, if Galway have figured it out and are saying it in the national media, you can be pretty sure Kerry have looked at it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And look, like, Declan Quill and Darragh Long, they're two really astute guys. Like, they've done a phenomenal job with this Kerry team. Like, I think people maybe forget what had gone on in previous seasons down in Kerry. Like, there was a lot of turbulence. I remember 2018, and they didn't win a single game of the league. They got docked points actually for the one game they did win for fielding an ineligible player. They got relegated to Division 2. There was a lot of off-field issues, changes in management. So in fairness to Quill and Long, they've come in and really steadied the ship. And even just speaking to them, like, you know, they're really ambitious guys. They've put in serious work, and they've instilled this belief in the Kerry team that, you know, they can go and win the All-Ireland. Like, they told them all to clear their calendars for the date of the All-Ireland final at the start of the year, with girls looking back at them like they had 10 heads. So you can bet your bottom dollar on it that they have studied absolutely everything Meath do, and they've watched tape, and they've prepared their team exactly for how they want them to play on Sunday. And yeah, as Nicola said, I was on that interview, and she spoke about not bringing the ball into the tackle because they'll tear you to shreds if you do that, and to just try and use as much width in your game as possible. But look, it's easy said. It's not just quite as easily done, particularly not in an All-Ireland final. But I'm really interested to see what Kerry are going to bring to the table, like, because as we say, they do play that nice brand of attacking football. Will they change anything they do to try and counter Meath? Because I think the last day of the semi-final, Donegal really tried to kind of mirror Meath's system and, you know, tried to nullify them by playing pretty much very similarly to how they play. And I don't know if that worked, but we obviously know that Donegal are a much more defensive team than probably this Kerry team are. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it does pan out on Sunday. I think one thing as well with this Kerry team, a lot of people are speaking about them kind of like their younger talents and their rising stars, that they are a young team with no fear, but there's a lot of experience right down the spine of the team too. Like, you have Emma Sherwood, Emma Costello now, and you have Coach Lynch, Lorraine Scanlon in midfield, and obviously Louise Newmer-Hertig. I don't know how we've gotten so long to this podcast without mentioning her just yet. But like, those girls, you know, their experience is absolutely priceless. You've Anna Galvin, you've Louise Galvin on the bench too. Like, girls that have been there and done it, particularly maybe not in All-Ireland finals or I suppose in terms of championship, but they've done quite a lot in their careers, and you know they'll be in a nice place heading into Sunday. I think excitement will certainly be building them.
Yeah, you've mentioned her now. Don't worry, I wasn't going to forget about her at all. I wouldn't quite call it rolling back the years. She's not that old, but she's having a season to remember. Louise Newmer-Hertig, I suppose. Denise, the temptation is when you're Kerry and you do have kind of that attacking talent, and you know, some of it's coming from their half back line as well. They are quite a free scoring team. The temptation is, you know, to kind of take the approach that the Kildare men stupidly took against the Dublin men in the Leinster final this year, and try and say you'll take them in a shootout. Obviously, Meath aren't quite that, haven't got that attacking flair, but at the same time, you know, Kerry could throw the kitchen sink at Meath. Meath could absorb it, and then Kerry might be thinking, "Oh, what now?"
Yeah, and it's interesting talking about Donegal in the last game, how they nearly tried to match them. But I think what Kerry have gone for them is they would have a much better conversion rate. And even though Donegal did match them, I think Donegal created something like 20 chances and only maybe converted 8 or 9 of them. And I don't think that will happen with Kerry on Sunday, you know. So look, I don't think Kerry are going to go ultra defensively, but to add to that really experienced spine, Emma, like I would throw in there, like I just think she's been like phenomenal this year in full back, Kaylee Cronin. You know, I think like as young, like how she marshals that back line and her skill on the ball, you know, like she could play anywhere on the pitch, you know, and she's such got a strong presence on the pitch. And I was actually in Croke Park listening to her, like her talking on the back line. So I think she's going to be key for Kerry in terms of that. No, I think they'd be very naive to go with them, but certainly with the kicking talent that they have in their team, Kerry, you would be certainly trying to hit Meath on the break. You know, I suppose where I feel Meath have got a little bit slower this year is maybe transitioning from that like blanket defence. I don't think they're exploding up the pitch. Maybe they did like last year. It was just a joy to watch them. Whereas I feel it's a little bit more laboured, and maybe that's because teams are more aware of what they're doing. But on the flip side of that, I think if Kerry do get any turnovers or breaks, I think they need to be looking up and hitting long ball, and they're all capable of doing that. I mean, Niamh Carmody, like, she has been phenomenal for Kerry this year in terms of spraying the ball and her vision. And I think if Kerry can, it's not going to work every time, but I think, you know, Kerry have been scoring goals. I think they've scored 13 goals so far in the championship.
13 in 4 games, yeah.
Yeah, you know, so like if Kerry can catch Meath on the break, and Meath aren't looking to score goals because their style of play isn't really looking to get goals. So even if Kerry could hit them, do a Kildare-esque on it, you know, for a 5 minute, you know, take that by the horns at some stage during the game, and if they were to get a couple of goals, I think it would put Meath a little bit more on the back foot. And I think maybe that's the potential I see within the Kerry team for going at. Like, I would be definitely trying to create a couple of goal opportunities if I were Kerry, to go at them, to make Meath maybe have to come out of that defensive blanket a little bit. But, you know, Meath are so structured in that blanket, but I actually feel this year it's nearly a little bit more structured, or they're just a little bit more tired or slow in the transition then into attack. And I think that that's what's making the wins more difficult for them this year. It seems to be very laboured coming out of their back line, and maybe that's again because one of their main ball carriers and Vikki Wall has been so well marshalled everyone they come up against. So I mean, there's definitely chinks in the armour there that Kerry can expose, and look, that's not taken away from Meath and their style of play. But you know, if you were Kerry, you would certainly not be going out throwing caution to the wind, but I would certainly be trying to penetrate that defence early and maybe get a goal or two to put Meath on the back foot.
Yeah, Emma, like Meath they're all about the collective in terms of defence. But would you think Eamonn Murray would be looking at someone to kind of man mark Louise Nimmer-Hurtig and possibly Siofra O'Shea, who would probably be, you know, kind of the two main threats in full forward line, half forward line? Is that kind of what Meath would do, or are they more just about a kind of a zonal defence, a kind of flooding the area and stopping the ball from getting there in the first place?
Yeah, I suppose in the past they probably have been more about that zonal defence, flooding the area, just surrounding the scoring zone. And it's something that we've seen so many teams in ladies football, even just in the club game, do recently. It's obviously so important, but I think Meath probably brought that to another level maybe last year. But yeah, like when you have talents like Louise Nimmer-Hurtig, who can shoot from anywhere, like she really can, you do need to have extra attention on those players. So yeah, I think maybe a man marking job might be in order there. Like I don't know, Denise, who do you think who would you throw on Louise or on Siofra, maybe either?
Possibly Katie New. I thought when Katie New did a man marking job against Amy Mackin for Armagh, who I just think is also, you know, in terms of skill level and, you know, for me, up there with Louise Nimmer-Hurtig in terms of her skill level. I thought Katie New did a super job on her last year when she took her. I think she's a very tight man marker. It's whether or not Meath choose to do that. Another person for me in that Kerry forward line, you know, that could, you know, you don't want people running with the ball, but if anyone was to run with the ball, I think Danielle O'Leary for Kerry has been so impressive. It's a different type of taking a player on, and I think she might be key for Kerry as well in terms of just breaking that first tackle maybe if it's on. But again, that'll depend on early ball getting into her. But I do agree. I think Meath more, they don't necessarily go with the man-to-man. It's all about that blanket defence. But if they were putting someone to give special attention on Louise Nimmer-Hurtig, I mean, Mary Kate Lynch could do it either, but I think it could be Katie New.
Yeah, she's a terrier, isn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
As you mentioned there, Danielle O'Leary, I think we have to touch on her league final appearance.
Yeah.
Off the bench, and just she completely swung the game in Kerry's favour. Like that, we knew a little bit about her, but she hadn't really announced herself, I guess, on the national stage until that point. And yeah, fantastic player, really physical as well, and just as you say, those driving runs with the ball, and obviously her accuracy before the post, she could have a big day, because I think, you know, she was probably held a little bit quieter in the semi-final, and that's something that I suppose, you know, we've seen in the last few weeks, even in the men's game. Shane Walsh, you know, had a quiet enough quarter-final, quiet enough semi-final, exploded in the final. So there's an opportunity there for a player to do that, and Danielle O'Leary could certainly be that person for Kerry.
Denise, at the other end of the field again, Kerry will have their hands full, obviously, and Emma Duggan, Vikki Wall, and Stacey Grimes, who tend to grab a lot of the headlines. I'm kind of interested to get your assessment on how Kelsey Nesbitt has been this year, because obviously she was seen as a huge loss last year. She was out injured, and her coming in this year was kind of be like, how's anyone going to stop me when they add in the forward who had the most potential before she was injured. She's had her good days, but like she hasn't quite perhaps lit up the championship as we might have expected. Is that down to just the fact that maybe Meath haven't clicked, or do you think maybe the year out has impacted her personally?
I definitely think the year out has probably impacted, and it wasn't just a year out; it was the particular year out. When
it had to be a killer.
Yeah, and those type of wins really galvanise a team, and when it's working like that, it's very hard to break back into it. And also Bridgetta Lynch is probably not getting into that starting forward line as much, and I suppose that brings us to the substitutions as well, in terms of Meath tend to use those same subs maybe to come in and out. To Niamh Gallagher would be another one where they rotate those few forwards, and they'll bring them in maybe towards the I don't know, the start of the fourth quarter, so to speak, if we're allowed to talk about quarters now, water breaks are gone. But like I think a year out is always going to, make it hard for a player to come back in. But I think coming in on the back of where that Meath team were after that All-Ireland win, and how impressive their forward line were, and all the work that they've done, and no matter how much you're training or going hard at training, there's nothing like those games. And Meath had such a run of really impressive games last season, and I suppose even the wins that we're talking about this year, when you're grinding them out, if you're not on the pitch, it is harder to get up to the pace of them. And I do think it was just an unfortunate year she was out, and also it's the quality of the girls that are there. You're not just going to come back and replace those girls without really impressing, I suppose.
It's impossible not to mention it, really, Emma. The kind of the shadow makes it sound a bit dramatic, but like there is the AFLW kind of element here, not for Kerry, but for me. Then like Vikki Wall is just like, she's the heartbeat of this team. You'd have to say she was the face of the All-Ireland victory. You could say she's like the powerhouse. She's just like, she's, as Denise mentioned, she's kind of the key to the way they play and the fast transition. It's unlikely she's going to play for me next year. It's unknown at this stage, but and herself and midfielder Orlagh Lally, they're getting a bit of a dispensation from their clubs in Australia to kind of come out and start pre-season a bit later. But it must be very hard for, like he says, that's tomorrow's problem, I think was his line about it. But it is tough knowing that your star player is potentially playing her last game for the county for a while. But again, it's all up in the air because we don't really know how these year-long contracts in the AFLW are going to be structured yet, and whether there will be an opportunity for people to come back and play for their counties. It is an uncertain time for women's football in general, but particularly this week, pointedly, I would say, for Meath.
Yeah, definitely, and it's I suppose difficult to ignore in the narrative. It is all part of the game on Sunday, probably, like you say, because the fact that Vikki Wall and Orlagh Lally are heading from Meath, and it's something that's kind of been, I suppose, highlighted in the past few weeks as well. I know I was on a call with Emma Duggan a few weeks back, and she was asked, is this kind of last chance saloon for this group to go and do it again? Would it be the perfect send-off? And she was adamant that it wasn't, that she hopes to see them back in the Meath jersey, but it would be obviously a nice way to send them on their way. But I suppose it's been a kind of weird this week. I know Eamonn Murray spoke about the fact that the backroom team are breaking up, and his future is a little bit uncertain too. And he said he wouldn't tell anyone what he was doing until after the game. But like, I suppose that's the way Murray goes on. Like, he's a character. But there is that shadow, I suppose, as you say, a little bit dramatic, but maybe that is hanging over me. I know management say things to the media and players say things to the media, and they could be saying something completely different within their own group, and I'd imagine they won't be getting too carried away about any of that. Their focus will be fully on the job at hand. But yeah, that definitely is a narrative coming in this weekend, and as you say, just the wider picture, the AFLW, it is probably the biggest issue facing the game of ladies football at the minute. It's hard to, I suppose, to ignore it when the numbers are getting so big. I think it's 21 players signed on for the new season. In the past, it was okay because I I suppose there was that best of both worlds, where players could go to Australia and play AFLW from December, January until April or so, come home, and then into the championship. So we had our biggest names on the biggest stages for the biggest games. But, you know, obviously this summer we saw the vast majority of the contingent that played AFLW last year didn't play for the counties this year. I suppose Mayo were certainly hit hard with Sarah Rowe, even Grace Kelly, Aileen Gilroy, Rachel Kieran's. I know she was injured and she had intended to play football, but you know that's 4 or 5 big names that we don't have in the championship, which is tough, and it's something that I suppose Declan Quill spoke about at the media day on Tuesday, that people, I suppose, all week have been speaking about David Clifford and Shane Walsh, the biggest names in the men's game, lighting up the All-Ireland final. And, you know, it could be a case in the future where we don't have Emma Duggan, we don't have Louise New-Herthig there to light up the women's game, just like Vikki Wall and Orlagh Lally most likely will not be there next year.
Yeah, you'd hope, Denise, that this, as we mentioned at the start, the kind of broadening of the top tier of Gaelic football, of women's football, I mean, that it has a similar impact as it does in the men's game, which is, you know, top counties, you know, they lose a young prospect, they lose a minor or an under 20 who was like Mark O'Connor and Kerry, who was going to be the next big thing, and you know, Kerry still winning All Ireland in 2022. The world keeps spinning, but then on the other hand, you know, the talent pools probably are smaller even in the bigger counties, and you know, a Vikki Wall or an Emma Duggan is a massive loss to a county, even a team with as the recent success of Meath. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I find it hard, and I'd say it's very hard for the girls that stay, and you know, you wouldn't begrudge any of the girls for going. Like ideally, if you could get them all to go when they're older, like Breach and Breach Sack and Cora Staunton, you know, when they're at the latter end of their career, like you'd love to see them, you know, do it all while they were younger in the LGFA and then head over. But look, it's becoming, I suppose, more and more appealing. I think people just feel it's an opportunity that's too big to pass up, and I don't know if that's where you start maybe with the LGFA, that you make it more appealing to stay here. I think I'm not sure the Kerry managers are kind of making the point that it's also a lot more appealing for David Clifford to stay here, that maybe the draw of playing football elsewhere wouldn't be as big, because maybe, you know, there's more perks being involved at the higher end, the men's game. And I don't know how you do that in the ladies' game, but I mean, you know, and you've heard of people going and other people on the team being really disappointed to lose them, because maybe it's slightly different, like you said, because the pool is smaller. But I know, and I heard of some girls going at one stage, you know, girls within a panel were really disappointed, and it was a big dent to morale nearly, I suppose, when they initially heard it. And you know, that's never good for the game, and I'm sure it's the same despite what we might hear out of the camp. Like, I'm sure that's a big blow to the Meath girls who are there, and who maybe girls who feel that they wouldn't go because they want to give it all to Meath. And you know, it leaves a lot of, I suppose, questions as well in terms of people's intent towards the county jersey and the pride and the love of it, you know. And you know, I think they're hard conversations for teams to have. I know if I was involved in a team that was successful and we wanted to build on it, I'd be bitterly disappointed to be losing girls like that, you know. And that's no disrespect to the girls who are going. You respect their decision and all that, but you would be bitterly disappointed. And you do feel, if you have a bit of momentum, I suppose, to lose players like that. It is huge in 80s football. You know, I do think it is. And like I said, even in terms of the morale of the squad, people may think it's going to affect worse than it does. And even that alone maybe can rattle a team, you know. So I'm sure with all the talk coming out of me, that has to affect them. Although another part of me wonders if Eamonn Ryan doesn't come out with something the week of a big game just to kind of deflect, you know.
Yeah.
All came out was the week of the league final, and now we're talking about Emma Troy heading off on a holiday and the management team heading off somewhere else, you know. So I don't know, and if it is deflection, fair play to him, because it works, because he does generate a conversation around other things. And also, I kind of really enjoy the honesty of it all, and it's just kind of carefree and kind of the way they played last year, you know. He just says it as he sees it, and whether he just throws the bomb out to leave us off and see what conversation he generates. But with regards to the AFL thing, yeah, look, it's a problem for the LGFA, because I think the more people who go and the more younger girls see it and see the opportunity, the more who will want to go.
Yeah, it can snowball. just finally, before I get your predictions, then Emma, I was surprised. I was kind of doing a bit of research earlier to find that this is only Maggie Farrelly's second All Ireland final, her first since 2014. You know, we kind of think because she made that leap into the men's game that she would have been doing more finals. But I guess will both teams be happy with her as an appointment? From what I've seen of her, she seems like a fairly pragmatic referee. I think is a fair way of putting it. I wouldn't, you know, she does tend to let a game go as much as the rule book allows, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think so. I'm from Cavan myself, so I know Maggie quite well from directing some of our games. Although she's more so doing the intercounty ones now, obviously. But yeah, really good referee. She'll, I suppose, let the game flow as much as she can. I don't think it's something that we've kind of put so much focus on in the ladies' game in the past years. Obviously, there's a lot of noise around who the referee is when they're appointed in the men's game, but it's probably something that goes a little more under the radar in the ladies' game. But yeah, I don't think either team will be thinking too much into that. Obviously, there's a job to be done for both of them on Sunday. And, you know, obviously there is a lot of talk around physicality in ladies football, and, you know, it is pretty much a non-contact game as it stands. But please God, the game will be left low, because we obviously want as good of a spectacle as we can. You know, the most eyes will be on this day, as it always is every single year. So yeah, I'd imagine Maggie will hopefully have a good game. And yeah, we won't be talking about any controversial refereeing decisions in the aftermath. But I don't want to put a hex on it now.
yeah. Okay.
2014 was I don't know if you remember that game. That was my last ever game for Dublin that I played when we were 10 points up against Cork with about 14 minutes to go. So that's the way I remember Maggie's last game, because it was also last referee.
She wouldn't be your favourite referee.
Oh, it was nothing to do with Maggie that day. That was all on us. But that's my memory of the 2014 final, yeah.
Yeah, sorry for bringing it up then, Denise.
That's all right.
I'll come to you first then, Emma. Neck on the block time. How do you see it going? Who's going to win?
Oh, the worst time for these podcasts, isn't it? I'm not hectic on the predictions, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. But I think Meath, I think they'll just have that little bit more down the home straight. I do think it'll be really tight and cagey early on. I think Kerry will really put it up to them, but I think Meath will just eke it out. I'm not sure if that's the way it's going to go, but that's what my head is telling me right now.
Okay, and Denise?
Yeah, like me, they're strong favourites, and you know, like I said, I was really impressed with how they gritted out the performances, and you know, if they've timed this run, well, then I think we're going to get some performance from them. I'm just finding it really hard to write off Kerry, because I have to say probably my most enjoyable game this year was the Kerry Armagh game. I just really enjoyed the football. I love how they mix it, the long and the short. I don't know. I think Kerry will be thereabouts down the end, and I'm not trying to be controversial, but I'm actually going to maybe tip them to win by a point, which I'll probably blow up in my face as well. But just speaking about the referee too, I think it's interesting this year. Meath have had a couple of sin bins just when we're talking about the physicality and that and their style of play, and I think that could impact. I mean, it didn't impact them, the sin bins, the last day against Donegal, but I think that would impact them more against Kerry. Look, I'm kind of throwing a curveball there. Look, I think Meath have all the ammunition to win it. I just, you know, I don't know why.
Stick to your convictions, Denise. Stick with Kerry. Go on.
Go with Kerry.
Right. I'm a contrarian, so I backed Galway to win the men's All Ireland from before it started, and I almost pulled off the coup of the season. So I'm a contrarian. I do like an underdog, and I don't know. I find it very hard to back against a team with Louise Nima-Hurtig in the form she's in. So I'm betting on one player basically. So I'm going to go for Kerry. So that's 2-1 in favour of the underdogs. Emma will be laughing at us on Sunday evening now.
So will Meath be delighted as well.
Yeah. They'll be pinning this podcast to the dressing room door. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Emma and Denise, we will obviously have online coverage of this on the RTÉ website, the RTÉ News app. Be live on RTÉ Radio 1 on Sunday Sport. And Denise, and Co. will be on Sunday night with highlights on the Sunday game on RTÉ2, so you can follow it. And obviously it's live on TG4 GAA. The clue's in the name of the championship. So we'll be back next week. Thank you very much for joining us. Good luck. Thank you. Goodbye.
Crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's